The House of Representatives is still waiting to vote on a Republican-backed budget resolution that would extend Donald Trump's 2017 tax cuts, boost money for the military and border enforcement, but most importantly would cut mandatory programs like Medicaid and SNAP, the food assistance program. And Republicans delayed the vote as Speaker Mike Johnson tried to wrangle hardliner Republicans who refused to support the bill because they believe it does not cut enough. Speaker Mike Johnson and President Trump spent the afternoon speaking with those members. The Senate already passed a smaller version without taxes, but that, according to Congressman Jason Smith, the powerful chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, well, doesn't stand a chance in the House, he says. The White House will host a meeting with Republicans in the House and the Senate in the hope that they will get on the same page. Joining me now is Melanie Zanona, NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent. So, Melanie, I don't know. How's it going? Are there any votes in the hallway there you could help corral for?
Yeah, listen, I mean, we had been reporting all day that this budget blueprint was on thin ice. There were moderates who were concerned over these Medicaid cuts. They appeared to have come around, but it was these conservative hardliners, a group of about 4 of them, that were a firm no. And on the floor just moments ago, there was Speaker Mike Johnson and his leadership team trying to twist arms, hauling them to a back room, trying to convince them to get to yes or to at least vote present, which would have helped them lower the threshold that they needed to actually pass this bill. Earlier today, Donald Trump was even making phone calls, getting involved, trying to convince these holdouts to flip to yes. But it looks like they were not able to get there. And so we're told that the leadership has formally pulled this bill, meaning they're not going to vote on it tonight and perhaps ever. So it's really back to the drawing board. And it is now a huge question of what comes next as Republicans try to advance President Donald Trump's agenda with the razor-thin margins they have here in the House. I'm looking out right now in case some of these leadership members walk by off the House floor as they try to figure out their next steps. But one of the potential options on the table is to just take up the Senate-passed version that the Senate was already able to pass. It's a very different bill, though. They want to first just do a quick bill that would just talk about defense and border security and then talk about taxes later. So that has been a debate that has been roiling the Republicans here on Capitol Hill. But it looks like House Republicans just not able to get it done tonight. Michael.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be one of those long, short nights on Capitol Hill. Melanie Zanona, right. Thank you so much. Let's bring in former Republican Congressman Denver Riggleman. My man, Denver, you know, you've been in this room.
Going,
yeah, I'm good, man. You know how this works. You know the drill, the search for votes. When there are no votes to be had. Talk about what you're hearing and seeing right now as the House conservatives in particular are, despite the encouragement from Donald Trump and the Speaker, are holding the line and not giving the vote because they want to cut more. But the Speaker knows that bill is DOA in the Senate.
Yeah, it's tough on them, isn't it, Michael? I feel so sad.
Take the smile off your face, dude. Look at
well, it's awful. But, you know, there's been 22 budget reconciliation bills since 1974, right, give or take. And budget reconciliation is not easy, right? It's a complex process. The thing is they hold the majorities, right? And it's really easy if they have, you know, a president who's a Republican. You know this, Michael, but just tell the American public before I just spring this on them, right? In the Senate and right in the House, right? But they have to actually agree on the language. And this is where, when you get into these type of things where you're looking for votes, where crazy actually helps the American public. And also where now, you know what Republican congressmen are looking at, Michael, and you know this, with reconciliation, they own it. You know, when you have reconciliation, right, and you take away the filibuster from the Senate, now they're looking like, oh, my goodness, right? 55% of my constituency in, say, Tennessee's 5th or whatever are actually on Medicaid. Now they're looking at their crosstabs and they're like, even though we're completely loyal to President Trump, we really care about winning more than anything. And we actually care more about that. So now you have this problem. You have people who believe that there's aliens in, you know, in the Bible that are actually you're trying to argue with to get these votes across the line. So now this is where crazy becomes an advantage for the American people, because now you're actually arguing against crazy during the reconciliation process where the Republicans actually have to own this entire thing when we go into the midterm cycle.
And therein lies the rub, the ownership part, because in this proposal, you're looking to pass a $4.5 trillion tax cut, $2 trillion in cuts for mandatory spending, increase defense spending by $100 billion, $2.8 trillion in deficit increase, and the resolution also includes instructions to a handful of committees to add up to at least $1.5 trillion in cuts over 10 years. The reality of it is this thing cuts to the bone in some critical spaces like SNAP programs that feed poor children, in areas like Medicare that touch on, and Medicaid for that matter, that deal with the health care of the poor. What is it about this that those conservatives don't get that tells you got poor folks in your community as well who are going to be on the receiving end of these cuts? How do they go out and justify, oh, here, Elon Musk, take a $70,000 increase or deduction in your taxes, whereas mom and pop small business owner, you only get to see maybe a $50 increase in your tax benefits?
Michael, I mean, you just nailed it. With the question, right, is that how do they do this? Because right now, if I'm a Democrat, even if I'm an independent or I'm a center-right person who wants to take these people on, they're licking their chops because they have to go and explain this right to their constituents when this passes. And that's what's mind-boggling to me. It's like they don't know the difference between mandatory and discretionary funding. So how are they going to explain that, right? This is mandatory funding. Mike, this isn't discretionary. Right now, you're talking about actual entitlements that are on the table that you're taking away. And when Democrats, if they ever message, right, or independents, if they learn how to message, they can rip them apart just based on this specific thing, that the very idea of ripping apart that much mandatory spending does have a trickle effect that's huge into Medicaid and things of that nature.